The helicopter blades screamed their final rotation before the metal bird plummeted toward the jagged peaks of the Colorado Rockies. And Kyle Sutton gripped the seat restraints as his world became a violent blur of sky and stone. He had been flying from Denver to Aspen for a real estate deal that would have added another $20 million to his portfolio. 26 years old and already worth more than most people would see in 10 lifetimes, Kyle had built an empire buying distressed properties, renovating them, and flipping them for massive profits. His instincts for location and value were legendary in the industry, but none of that mattered now as the pilot beside him fought with controls that had stopped responding. "Brace for impact," the pilot shouted over the screeching alarms. Kyle squeezed his eyes shut as the helicopter clipped a pine tree, spun violently, and then smashed into the mountainside with a bone-shattering crunch. Metal shrieked. Glass exploded. The world went black. When consciousness returned, it came slowly, painfully. Kyle's head throbbed with an intensity that made thinking nearly impossible. His left arm screamed in agony when he tried to move it. The helicopter cabin was tilted at a sickening angle, wedged between two massive boulders. Through the shattered windshield, he could see the pilot slumped forward, blood trickling down his face. "Hey," Kyle croaked, his throat raw. "Hey, are you okay?" No response. Kyle fought against his seatbelt with his good hand, finally managing to release the buckle. He collapsed against the side of the cabin, his broken arm sending white-hot pain through his entire body. He bit down hard to keep from screaming. The pilot still had not moved. With trembling fingers, Kyle reached forward and pressed 2 fingers against the pilot's neck, searching for a pulse. For a terrifying moment, he felt nothing. Then, faint but present, he detected the steady rhythm of a heartbeat. Relief flooded through him. The man was alive, just unconscious. Kyle knew he needed help. He pulled his phone from his pocket with his good hand, but the screen was a spiderweb of cracks, completely dead. He looked around the destroyed cabin, searching for the emergency beacon, but it had been torn from its mounting during the crash. His eyes landed on the pilot's phone clipped to his belt. Kyle reached over, wincing at every movement, and grabbed it. Also dead. The batteries must have been knocked loose in the impact. The temperature inside the cabin was already dropping. Kyle could see his breath forming small clouds. Late October in the Rockies meant snow was coming soon. He needed to get out and find help before exposure killed them both. Using his good arm, Kyle managed to force open the buckled door. Cold mountain air rushed in, sharp and clean. He half fell, half climbed out of the wreckage, landing hard on the rocky ground. The impact jarred his broken arm, and he did cry out this time, the sound echoing through the empty wilderness. He stood slowly, taking stock of his surroundings. They had crashed in a narrow valley between 2 peaks. Dense pine forest surrounded them on all sides. The sun was already sinking toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Kyle knew he could not leave the pilot, but he also knew they would both die if he did not find help. He looked back at the helicopter, calculating his options. The man was breathing, and Kyle had managed to turn off the fuel line to prevent any chance of fire. It would have to be enough. He started walking, cradling his broken arm against his chest. Every step sent jolts of pain through his body. His expensive Italian shoes, perfect for boardrooms, were utterly useless on the rocky terrain. Within minutes, his feet were screaming in protest. The forest seemed to close in around him as the light faded. Kyle had grown up in San Diego, all beaches and sunshine. His idea of roughing it was a hotel without room service. Now he was alone in the wilderness with a broken arm, no phone, no supplies, and night falling fast. He walked for what felt like hours but was probably only 30 minutes. His vision was starting to blur at the edges. Concussion, probably. He knew he should stop, that continuing in his condition was dangerous, but the image of the unconscious pilot kept him moving forward. Then he saw it. A flicker of orange light through the trees. His heart leaped. Civilization. Help. He stumbled toward it, desperate. As he got closer, he realized it was not a house or a road. It was a campfire. Someone was camping out here in the middle of nowhere. Right now, that someone was better than nothing. Kyle broke through the tree line into a small clearing. A tent was pitched near the fire, and a figure sat beside the flames, a book open in their lap. The person looked up at the sound of his approach, and Kyle found himself staring at a woman with long, dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, wearing hiking pants and a fleece jacket. Her eyes went wide as she took in his appearance. "Oh my God," she said, jumping to her feet. The book tumbled to the ground. "Are you okay?" Kyle tried to answer, but the world tilted sideways. He reached out to steady himself, but there was nothing to grab. He felt himself falling, and then everything went dark again. When he came to this time, he was lying on something soft. A sleeping bag, he realized. The campfire crackled nearby, brighter now, built up to provide more heat. The woman was kneeling beside him, her face creased with concern. She had a first aid kit open next to her. "Hey, welcome back," she said gently. "I'm Lily Sanders. What's your name?" "Kyle," he managed. "Kyle Sutton. There was a crash, helicopter. My pilot is still there, he needs help." Her expression shifted immediately to focused determination. "Where?" "I don't know. I walked for maybe half an hour that way." He gestured vaguely with his good arm. Lily pulled out a satellite phone from her pack. Of course she had a satellite phone. Kyle would have laughed if everything did not hurt so much. She dialed quickly, efficiently explaining the situation to what sounded like emergency services. She gave their coordinates with practiced ease, then described Kyle's condition and the general direction he had come from. When she hung up, she looked back at him. "Search and rescue is on their way. They'll send out teams to find your pilot and airlift you both out, but it's going to take a few hours. The terrain is rough and it's getting dark." She paused, studying him. "Your arm is definitely broken. Looks like a closed fracture, which is good. No bones poking through. You probably have a concussion too. I'm going to make a sling to stabilize the arm. This is going to hurt." "Can't hurt worse than it already does," Kyle said, trying for humor and failing. Lily's lips quirked in what might have been sympathy or amusement. She worked quickly and competently, using materials from her first aid kit and some extra cordage to fashion a sling that held his arm immobile against his chest. She was right. It did hurt. A lot. But once it was secured, the constant jarring pain lessened slightly. "What are you doing out here alone?" Kyle asked, partly to distract himself from the pain and partly because he was genuinely curious. What kind of person camped alone in the wilderness? "Hiking the Continental Divide Trail," Lily said, sitting back on her heels. "Well, sections of it anyway. I've got 2 weeks off from work and I wanted to see the mountains before winter really sets in." "What do you do?" "I'm a wilderness EMT and part-time park ranger." She gave him a quick smile. "Lucky for you." "Yeah," Kyle breathed. "Really lucky." She checked his pupils with a small flashlight, watching how they responded. "Concussion for sure, but not severe. I need you to stay awake though. Talk to me. What were you doing in a helicopter?" So Kyle talked. He told her about his business, about the meeting in Aspen, about how one moment everything was fine and the next they were falling from the sky. As he talked, Lily worked. She cleaned the cuts on his face with gentle efficiency, checked him over for other injuries, and made him drink water from her bottle. "You're really prepared." Kyle observed as she pulled a thermal blanket from her pack and draped it over him. That's kind of the whole point of backpacking, Lily said. Being prepared for anything, weather changes, injuries, getting lost. You have to be self-sufficient out here. I'm usually pretty self-sufficient too, Kyle said defensively. Just not in the wilderness. Different skill sets, Lily agreed without judgment. She added more wood to the fire. I could not navigate a boardroom to save my life. Numbers make my head spin. But out here, I know what I'm doing. They fell into silence for a moment, the only sounds the crackling fire and the wind moving through the pines. Kyle studied Lily in the firelight. She was beautiful in an understated way, with strong features and clear hazel eyes that seemed to notice everything. She moved with confidence and competence, every action purposeful. It was mesmerizing to watch. "How long have you been hiking?" he asked. "My dad started taking me camping when I was 5, Lily said, her face softening at the memory. "After my mom died, it was just the two of us. The mountains became our escape, our therapy. We'd spend every weekend out here just hiking and talking and being together." She poked at the fire with a stick. "He passed away 3 years ago, heart attack, so now I come out here to feel close to him again." "I'm sorry," Kyle said quietly. Lily shrugged, but he could see the grief in her eyes. "He lived a good life, did what he loved. Not everyone can say that." She looked at Kyle. "What about you? Family, parents, 2 younger sisters. They're all in San Diego. Dad's a dentist, mom's a teacher. They think I'm crazy for working as hard as I do." "Are you crazy for it, I mean?" Kyle considered the question. "I don't know. I love what I do. Finding a broken-down property that everyone else has given up on and seeing the potential in it, making it beautiful again, giving it a new life. It's satisfying. But sometimes I look up and realize months have gone by and I have not done anything except work. Why real estate? My family never had much money growing up. Not poor, but everything was tight. I watched my parents stress about the mortgage, about repairs they could not afford. When I went to college, I worked construction in the summers. I learned how buildings worked, how to fix things. Then I started noticing properties that were undervalued, places where a little work could make a huge difference in value. I bought my first house when I was 20 with money I had saved and a loan I probably should not have qualified for. Fixed it up, sold it for twice what I paid, used that money to buy 2 more. It kind of snowballed from there. "How old are you now?" 26. Lily whistled low. "That's impressive, building an empire in 6 years. What about you? How old are you?" 24. "And I'm definitely not anywhere near empire building." She grinned. "I've got about $8,000 in my savings account and I'm proud of it." "That's still impressive," Kyle said, and he meant it. "You're doing what you love. That's worth more than money." "Says the millionaire," Lily teased, but there was no malice in it. "How did you know? You said you were adding 20 million to your portfolio with this deal." "Kind of gave it away." She shook her head. "I can't even imagine having that kind of money." "It's not as glamorous as people think," Kyle said. "It's mostly spreadsheets and phone calls and meetings. Today was supposed to be different. I usually drive, but I was in a hurry. And look how that turned out." Despite everything, Kyle laughed. It hurt, but it also felt good. "Yeah, worst decision I have made in a while." "Well, second worst," Lily corrected. "First worst was those shoes. What are those? Italian leather?" Kyle looked down at his ruined designer shoes. "Berluti. They cost $3,000. You paid $3,000 for shoes?" Lily looked genuinely shocked. "They're really nice shoes, or they were. For $3,000, they should be able to walk you out of the wilderness by themselves." Kyle laughed again, then groaned as the movement jarred his arm. Lily immediately looked concerned. "Sorry, should not make you laugh. How's your pain level?" "About an 8 out of 10. I've got some ibuprofen. It's not much, but it'll take the edge off." She dug in her first aid kit and produced 2 pills, which Kyle swallowed gratefully with more water. They talked as they waited for rescue. Lily told him about her favorite trails, about seeing a moose at dawn once and how majestic and terrifying it had been. About the time she got caught in a sudden storm above the tree line and had to shelter under a boulder for 4 hours. About the satisfaction of reaching a summit after hours of climbing and seeing the world spread out below. Kyle told her about his properties, about the Victorian mansion in San Francisco he had just finished restoring, about the warehouse conversion in Seattle that was now luxury lofts. He told her about his sisters, Emma, who was studying to be a doctor, and Olivia, who was an artist living in Portland. He found himself sharing things he normally kept private, about the pressure he sometimes felt, about the fear that he was missing out on life by focusing so much on work. "You almost died today," Lily said gently. "That changes perspective." "Yeah," Kyle agreed quietly. "It really does." The sound of helicopter blades cutting through the air interrupted their conversation. Lily stood up, pulling out a bright orange flare from her pack. She lit it and held it high, creating a beacon of light in the darkness. Within minutes, a rescue helicopter was hovering overhead, its spotlight illuminating the clearing. A team rappelled down, efficient and professional. They checked Kyle over, confirmed Lily's assessment of his injuries, and prepared to airlift him out. Another team, they explained, had already located the crashed helicopter and the pilot. He was alive and being transported to the hospital in Denver. As they strapped Kyle into the rescue harness, he looked at Lily. "Thank you," he said, "for everything." "Just doing what anyone would do," Lily said, but she smiled. "Can I see you again? After I get out of the hospital?" Lily hesitated, and Kyle's heart sank. Then she pulled out a small notebook from her pocket, scribbled something on a page, tore it out, and tucked it into his jacket pocket. "Get better first," she said. "Then we'll see." The rescue team lifted him up into the helicopter. As they flew toward Denver, Kyle kept his good hand pressed against his pocket, feeling the paper there like a promise. The hospital was a blur of tests and X-rays and doctors. His arm was indeed broken, a clean fracture of the ulna that would require a cast and 6 weeks of healing. His concussion was mild. He had bruised ribs and various cuts and scrapes, but nothing life-threatening. He was, as one doctor cheerfully informed him, extraordinarily lucky. His pilot, Marcus, was in more serious condition with a skull fracture and internal bleeding, but the doctors were optimistic about his recovery. Kyle visited him the next day, feeling a complicated mix of guilt and relief. Marcus was unconscious but stable, his wife sitting beside the bed holding his hand. "This is not your fault," she said when Kyle tried to apologize. "Marcus loves flying. He'd never blame you for a mechanical failure." But Kyle still felt responsible. He made sure Marcus's medical bills were covered and that his wife had everything she needed. It was the least he could do. His own family descended on the hospital like a well-meaning tornado. His mother cried and held him carefully, mindful of his injuries. His father gripped his shoulder with barely controlled emotion. His sister's video called from San Diego and Portland, both teary and scolding in equal measure. "You scared us half to death," Emma said, her face filling the phone screen. "I scared myself," Kyle admitted. When they finally left him alone to rest, Kyle pulled out the piece of paper Lily had given him. It had her phone number and a simple message: "Glad you're alive. Lily." He saved the number in his phone, but he did not call. Not yet. He needed to recover first to process what had happened. And he needed to figure out what he was actually going to say to her. The crash had changed something in him. Lying in that hospital bed, Kyle found himself thinking about his life in a way he never had before. What was he working so hard for? To build a bigger empire? To make more money he did not have time to spend? What was the point of it all if he was too busy to actually live? He thought about Lily, about the contentment on her face as she sat by her campfire reading a book, about how she had talked about the mountains, about her father, about finding peace and purpose in simplicity. She had $8,000 in savings and seemed happier than Kyle had felt in years. 2 days later, Kyle was released from the hospital with a cast on his arm, a prescription for painkillers he probably would not take, and strict instructions to rest. His assistant had arranged for a car to take him back to his penthouse in Denver. As he rode the elevator up to the 23rd floor, Kyle felt strangely disconnected from his own life. The penthouse was exactly as he had left it: modern, expensive, and utterly impersonal. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a spectacular view of the city. The furniture was all designer pieces selected by an interior decorator. There were no photographs on the walls, no personal touches. It looked like a showroom, not a home. Kyle stood in the middle of his living room and felt completely alone. He pulled out his phone and looked at Lily's number. Before he could overthink it, he sent a text. Out of the hospital. Broken arm, mild concussion, bruised ribs. Could be worse. How's the trail? He did not expect an immediate response. She was probably miles into the wilderness with no cell service. But to his surprise, his phone buzzed a minute later. Glad you're okay. Had to come back to town for a resupply. Actually at a coffee shop in Silverton right now. How are you really feeling? Kyle smiled and typed back. Honestly, weird. Everything feels different now. Near-death experiences tend to do that. Can I call you? Sure. Kyle hit the call button and Lily answered on the second ring. Hey, she said, and just hearing her voice made something in Kyle's chest ease. Hey, thanks for saving my life. You would have been fine. Search and rescue was already on their way. I might have frozen to death first, or passed out and hit my head again. You definitely saved my life. He could hear the smile in her voice. Okay, fine. I saved your life. You're welcome. Where are you headed next on your trail? I'm actually thinking about cutting the trip short, Lily said. I got a call this morning. There's a wildfire starting up near one of the state parks and they need all available personnel. I'm heading back tomorrow to help with containment and evacuation if needed. That sounds dangerous. It's part of the job. I knew what I was signing up for. Kyle found himself reluctant to let the conversation end. What are you doing tonight? Probably eating a huge dinner and sleeping in a real bed. Why? Silverton is only about an hour and a half from Denver. Let me take you to dinner. A thank you for the whole life-saving thing. There was a pause. You just got out of the hospital. I'm fine. Mostly. Come on, I owe you. Another pause, longer this time, then. Okay, but only because I want to make sure you're actually taking care of yourself. Text me the address. They agreed to meet at a restaurant in Silverton, a small mountain town known for its old mining history. Kyle arranged for a car to drive him, since he could not drive with one arm in a cast. The drive through the mountains was beautiful, the autumn colors painting the landscape in golds and reds, but Kyle barely noticed. He was too busy being nervous. He had not been nervous about seeing a woman in years. Maybe ever. Kyle dated occasionally, but it never went anywhere. The women he met through work were usually too similar to him, ambitious and driven to the point where there was no room for anything else. The women he met through friends were often intimidated by his success or only interested in his money. Either way, connections were shallow and brief. But Lily was different. She had seen him at his most vulnerable, had taken care of him without knowing who he was or what he was worth. She lived a completely different life than he did, valued completely different things. And somehow, in just a few hours by a campfire, he had felt more connected to her than to anyone else in recent memory. The restaurant was a cozy place with rough wood walls and a stone fireplace. Kyle arrived first and waited at the bar, sipping a ginger ale since alcohol was off limits with his concussion. When Lily walked in, he almost did not recognize her. She was still wearing practical clothes, jeans and a soft green sweater, but her hair was down, falling in dark waves past her shoulders. She had traded her hiking boots for regular shoes, and there was a touch of makeup that emphasized her eyes. She was beautiful in a way that made Kyle's breath catch. "Hey," she said, spotting him at the bar. "You actually came." "Of course I came. I invited you." "Yeah, but I half expected you to realize you had been concussed when you asked and cancel." She studied his face. "You look better." Less like death warmed over. "Thanks, I think." They were seated at a table near the fireplace. Lily ordered a burger and fries without even looking at the menu. Kyle followed her lead, figuring she knew the local food. When the waitress left, they looked at each other across the table. "This is weird, right?" Lily said. "I mean, 2 days ago you literally stumbled into my campsite half dead, and now we're having dinner together." "Definitely weird," Kyle agreed. "Good weird, though." "Yeah," Lily said, a smile tugging at her lips. "Good weird." They talked through dinner, the conversation flowing easily despite the strangeness of the situation. Lily told him about her work, about the satisfaction of helping people in the backcountry, about the frustration of tourists who came unprepared and put themselves in danger. Kyle told her about his latest project, a historic theater he was planning to restore in Portland, close to where his sister lived. "You ever worry about changing these places too much?" Lily asked. "Like you're restoring them but also altering them." "All the time," Kyle admitted. "That's why I'm really careful about maintaining the original character. With the theater, I'm keeping all the architectural details, the marquee, the plasterwork. I'm just updating the systems and making it functional again. The goal is to make it look like it did in 1925 but actually work for modern audiences." "That's cool," Lily said. "Respecting the history while giving it a future." "Exactly." After dinner, they walked through the small downtown area. The evening was cool, the mountain air crisp and clean. Lily pointed out constellations in the clear sky, identifying them with the ease of someone who had spent countless nights sleeping under the stars. "That's Cassiopeia," she said, tracing the W shape with her finger. "And over there is Andromeda. If the light pollution were less, you could see the Andromeda galaxy with the naked eye." Kyle looked up at the stars, at the vast sweep of the Milky Way across the sky. "I don't think I've ever actually looked at the stars, not like this." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I've seen the sky at night, obviously, but I've never stopped to really look at it to think about what I'm seeing. It's always just been background." Lily turned to look at him, her expression thoughtful. "What else have you been missing while you've been building your empire?" The question hit harder than she probably intended. Kyle thought about his life, about the endless cycle of work and more work. When was the last time he had done something just because he wanted to, not because it served some business purpose? "I don't know," he said honestly. "Maybe everything." They walked in silence for a moment. Then Lily said, "I should probably get back to my hotel. Early start tomorrow with the fire situation." "Right. Of course." Kyle did not want the evening to end, but he could not think of a reason to extend it. They walked back to where his car was waiting. Before she left, Lily turned to him. "Thanks for dinner. It was nice. Can I see you again? I'm going to be pretty busy with the wildfire for at least the next week." After that, Lily bit her lip, considering. "You're going back to Denver, right? Back to your penthouse and your business and your life." "Yes." And I'm going back to fighting fires and then heading home to Durango where I live in a tiny cabin on a ranger's salary. So we're from completely different worlds, Kyle. This was a nice moment, a weird connection because of a crazy situation, but it's not real life. It felt pretty real to me. Lily looked at him for a long moment, something sad and wistful in her eyes. You almost died. Everything feels significant right now. But in a few weeks, when you're healed and back to work, this is going to seem like a strange dream. I don't think so. You don't know that. No, Kyle admitted, but I'd like to find out. Lily sighed. I don't do complicated, Kyle. My life is simple by choice. I don't fit into fancy restaurants and penthouses and board meetings. I'm not asking you to, I'm just asking to see you again. Why? What do you think is going to happen here? Kyle stepped closer, careful of his broken arm. I don't know. But I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since I woke up by your fire. I want to know you. I want to see you again. And I think you want that too, or you would not have given me your number. Lily looked away, but not before Kyle saw the conflict in her expression. Finally, she pulled out her phone. Give me your number. I'll text you when I'm done with the fire situation, but I'm not making any promises. Kyle rattled off his number and heard his phone buzz a moment later with her text. That's all I'm asking for, a chance. You're persistent. Part of my charm. Lily shook her head, but she was smiling. Get some rest, Kyle. Take care of that arm. Stay safe with the fire. Always do. He watched her walk away, and even though she had not promised anything, Kyle felt hopeful in a way he had not in years. The next week was torture. Kyle tried to focus on work, taking video meetings from his penthouse since he could not travel with his injuries. But his concentration was shot. He kept checking his phone, hoping for a message from Lily. He knew she was busy fighting a wildfire, that she probably had no time or energy for texting, but that did not stop him from hoping. His assistant, Rachel, noticed his distraction immediately. During a video call about the Portland Theater project, she finally asked, "Are you okay? You seem off." "I'm fine, just recovering." "Is this about the woman who saved you?" Kyle stared at the screen. "How did you know about her?" The rescue report mentioned a Lily Sanders who called in the emergency and provided initial first aid. I did a quick search. She works as a wilderness EMT and ranger out of Durango. Seems competent. She's more than competent. She's amazing. Rachel's eyebrows rose. Oh, it's like that. I don't know what it's like. I took her to dinner to say thank you, and now she's not talking to me. Maybe because she's fighting a wildfire, I know that. Rationally, I know that. But it does not stop me from wanting to hear from her. Rachel smiled, something knowing and amused in her expression. You've got it bad. I barely know her. Sometimes that's how it works. My husband and I met when his car broke down outside my apartment. I let him use my phone to call a tow truck, and he asked me to dinner while we waited. We were married 6 months later. Really, really. When you know, she paused. But Kyle, be realistic. If this woman lives in Durango and works for the Park Service, she's not going to just uproot her life for you. I know. Are you willing to make changes, to compromise? Kyle thought about his penthouse, his business, his carefully constructed life. I don't know, he admitted. Maybe. Figure it out before you push this. Don't ask her for something if you're not willing to give equally in return. Rachel's words stayed with him. She was right, of course. Kyle was used to getting what he wanted, used to pursuing goals with single-minded focus. But Lily was not a property to be acquired or a deal to be closed. She was a person with her own life, her own dreams. If he wanted to be part of that, he had to be willing to meet her halfway. The question was, could he? 10 days after their dinner, Kyle's phone finally buzzed with a message from Lily. Fires contained. I'm exhausted but alive. How are you? Kyle immediately called her. Hey, Lily said, her voice rough with fatigue. I said text, not call. I wanted to hear your voice. Are you okay? Yeah. Tired, dirty. I smell like smoke and have not slept more than 4 hours at a stretch in over a week. But okay. When do you get to go home? Tomorrow morning. I'm checking into a hotel tonight to sleep for about 12 hours straight. Where are you? Still near Silverton, actually. The fire was in the state park just north of here. Can I see you? Not tonight, he added quickly. You need rest. But tomorrow before you go home, Kyle, please just coffee, 1 hour. Then I'll let you go home and sleep for a week if that's what you need. He could hear her sigh. You really are persistent. Is it working? Unfortunately, yes. Okay, coffee tomorrow. There's a place called Mountain Brew near the hotel. 10 in the morning. I'll be there. Kyle barely slept that night. He was up early arranging for a car, trying to decide what to wear. It was ridiculous to be this nervous about coffee with a woman, but he could not help it. This felt important. More important than any business deal he had ever made. He arrived at Mountain Brew 15 minutes early and ordered a black coffee he did not drink, too anxious to consume anything. When Lily walked in at exactly 10, Kyle's breath caught. She looked exhausted, her face paler than he remembered, dark circles under her eyes. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she wore sweatpants and an oversized hoodie. She was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Hey, she said, sliding into the seat across from him. Fair warning, I'm probably going to fall asleep mid-conversation. I'm running on fumes and stubbornness right now. Why did you agree to meet me if you're this tired? Because you would have just kept asking, and I'm too exhausted to keep saying no. But she smiled when she said it, taking the sting out of the words. They ordered coffee and pastries. Lily demolished a chocolate croissant in about 4 bites, then looked sheepishly at Kyle. Sorry, I'm starving. We were on MREs for the last week. Eat as much as you want. Tell me about the fire. Lily talked, her words painting a picture of long, grueling days digging fire lines, of smoke so thick you could barely see, of watching flames consume acres of forest. But she also talked about the camaraderie of the crew, the satisfaction of finally containing the blaze, the relief of knowing they had prevented it from reaching a nearby town. It's hard work, she said, but it matters. We saved homes, maybe lives. That's worth some lost sleep and smoke inhalation. You're incredible, Kyle said quietly. Lily shook her head. I'm just doing my job. No, you're more than that. You run toward danger while everyone else is running away. You sleep on the ground and fight fires and save clueless millionaires who crash helicopters in the mountains. You're a genuine hero. Stop, Lily said, but her cheeks flushed pink. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who chose a career helping people. And that makes you different from most people I know. They fell silent for a moment. Then Lily said, Why do you want to see me again, Kyle? Really? Because being around you makes me feel like I'm finally awake after years of sleepwalking through my life. Lily looked startled by the raw honesty in his words. That's a lot of pressure to put on someone you barely know. I know, but it's true. Since the crash, I've been thinking about what I'm doing with my life, what I want, and I keep coming back to that night by your campfire. You were so content, so at peace. I've been chasing success for 6 years, and I've never felt the way you looked sitting there reading your book. Kyle, you can't expect me to give you some kind of enlightenment or life purpose. That's not fair. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking for a chance to get to know you, to see where this goes. Where what goes? We live 2 hours apart. We have completely different lives. I don't see how this works. So we'll figure it out. We can meet in the middle, literally. There are towns between Denver and Durango. We can take turns visiting each other. I can make time. I want to make time. Lily looked down at her coffee, silent for a long moment. When she looked up, her eyes were uncertain. I've been hurt before. By someone who promised he could handle my lifestyle, that he understood I loved my work. But he couldn't. He wanted me to quit, to move to the city, to be someone I'm not. I won't do that again. I would never ask you to change who you are. You say that now. But when I'm gone for a week fighting a fire with no way to contact you, or when I choose to spend my vacation hiking alone in the wilderness instead of with you on some beach, you might feel differently. Then I'll deal with it. But give me a chance to try. Lily studied his face, searching for something. Finally, she said, "Okay, one chance. But Kyle, I mean it. I won't change my life for you, and if you decide you can't handle it, you need to be honest with me, I promise." "Okay then." She finished her coffee and stood up. "Now I really need to go sleep for about a month. But text me. We'll figure out when we can see each other again." Kyle stood too, carefully pulling her into a one-armed hug. She stiffened for just a moment, then relaxed against him. She smelled like smoke and pine and something floral, shampoo maybe. It was the best smell in the world. "Drive safe," he said. "You too. Take care of that arm." He watched her leave, and this time the goodbye felt less like an ending and more like a beginning. Over the next few weeks, Kyle and Lily developed a rhythm. They texted every day, sometimes long conversations, sometimes just quick check-ins. They talked on the phone when they could, though Lily's schedule was unpredictable. She worked shifts at the ranger station, led wilderness first aid classes, and still found time to hike whenever possible. Kyle found himself arranging his schedule around hers. He took video meetings instead of in-person ones so he could stay flexible. He delegated more to Rachel and his other employees, trusting them to handle things he would have insisted on controlling before. And every other weekend, he made the drive from Denver to Durango. The first time he visited her cabin, Kyle was charmed despite its tiny size. It was nestled in the woods outside town, a one-room structure with a sleeping loft, a small kitchen area, and a wood stove for heat. It was rustic and simple and utterly Lily. "It's not much," she said, watching his reaction nervously. "It's perfect," Kyle said honestly. And it was. The cabin was filled with personal touches that his penthouse lacked. Photographs of Lily and her father on various mountain peaks. A well-loved guitar in the corner. Shelves full of field guides and novels. It was a home, not just a place to sleep. They spent the weekend hiking. Lily took him on trails she loved, adjusting her pace and choosing easier routes to accommodate his healing arm. She taught him about the local ecology, pointing out animal tracks and native plants. She showed him how to properly filter water from a stream and how to read a topographic map. Kyle had never been interested in the outdoors before, but seeing it through Lily's eyes was revelatory. She knew the names of every bird, every tree. She could read the landscape like he read financial reports, understanding the story it told. Her enthusiasm was infectious. On Sunday evening, sitting on her tiny porch watching the sunset, Lily said, "You did good this weekend. Did not complain once, even though I know your arm was bothering you on that last climb. It was worth it. The view from the top was incredible." "Yeah," Lily agreed softly. "It always is." Kyle reached over and took her hand. She laced her fingers through his, the gesture feeling both natural and monumental. "I really like you, Lily." "I really like you too," she paused. "That kind of terrifies me." "Why?" "Because this is going well, better than I expected. And that means it's going to hurt more when it falls apart." "What if it doesn't fall apart?" "Everything falls apart eventually." "That's a pretty bleak worldview." Lily turned to look at him. "My mom died when I was 5. My dad was my whole world, and then he died too. The one serious relationship I had ended badly. Forgive me for being a little cynical about permanence." Kyle squeezed her hand. "I'm not going anywhere. You can't promise that. I can promise to try. That's all anyone can do. Lily rested her head on his shoulder. Okay, we'll try. The next weekend, Lily came to Denver. Kyle picked her up at the bus station, feeling oddly nervous about her seeing his penthouse. It represented everything about his old life, his old priorities. Now, seeing it through her eyes, he was afraid she would think he was superficial, materialistic. But Lily just walked through the space with interest, pausing at the windows to admire the view. This is impressive. I can see why you like it. Do you like it, I mean, she considered. It's beautiful, very you, successful and polished, but Kyle, it does not feel lived in. Where are your personal things? Your photos, your hobbies? I don't really have hobbies, and the photos are all digital. No wonder you feel disconnected from your life. Your home does not tell me anything about who you are. It could be anyone's apartment. Kyle looked around and realized she was right. I guess I never thought about it. Maybe you should. A home is supposed to be your sanctuary, the place that reflects who you are and what you love. That night, Kyle took Lily to one of Denver's best restaurants. He had worried she would be uncomfortable with the upscale environment, but she handled it with the same easy confidence she showed everywhere else. She charmed the waiter, asked intelligent questions about the menu, and fit in perfectly despite her simple dress and lack of designer accessories. You're full of surprises, Kyle said over dessert. What do you mean? I thought you might be intimidated by all this. The fancy restaurant, the city, my world. Lily raised an eyebrow. I spent 2 weeks trekking alone through some of the most remote wilderness in Colorado. I fought a wildfire and helped evacuate a town. Why would I be intimidated by a restaurant? Kyle laughed. Good point. Besides, Lily continued, I grew up working class, but I'm not uncultured. My dad made sure of that. We may not have had money, but he took me to museums and concerts. He taught me to appreciate good food and good conversation. I just don't need these things to be happy. What do you need to be happy? Lily thought for a moment. Purpose, connection, freedom. The knowledge that I'm making a difference, even a small one. Time in nature, people I love. She looked at Kyle. What about you? What makes you happy? Kyle realized he did not have a good answer. I don't know. I've been so focused on building my business, on succeeding, that I never really stopped to ask myself if I was happy. And now I think I'm starting to figure it out. He reached across the table and took her hand. This makes me happy. Being with you. Lily smiled, that soft, genuine smile that made Kyle's heart race. This makes me happy too. They fell into a pattern over the next few months. Alternate weekends together, constant communication in between. Kyle found himself changing in small ways. He started putting up photos in his penthouse, pictures of his family, of his sisters, of Lily. He bought a guitar and started teaching himself to play, something he had always wanted to do but never had time for. He cut back his work hours, delegating more and actually taking full weekends off. His friends and family noticed the change. His sisters were delighted, peppering him with questions about Lily. His parents were more cautious, worried that he was getting too serious too quickly. His business associates were confused by his new priorities, but Kyle did not care. For the first time in years, he felt like he was living instead of just existing. Winter came to the Rockies, bringing snow and cold. Lily taught Kyle to snowshoe, and they spent a weekend exploring winter trails together. Kyle taught Lily about architectural history, taking her on tours of historic buildings in Denver. They learned each other's worlds, bridging the gap between their different lives. On Christmas Eve, Kyle was at Lily's cabin. She had decorated modestly, a small tree with simple ornaments, greenery gathered from the woods. It was cozy and warm, the wood stove crackling, snow falling gently outside. I have something for you, Kyle said, pulling out a wrapped package. Lily looked alarmed. Kyle, we said small gifts. It is small, kind of. Just open it. Lily tore off the paper to reveal a leather journal with her initials embossed on the cover. Inside, Kyle had written a message. For recording your adventures, may there be many more. Kyle, this is beautiful. That's not all. He pulled out an envelope. I know you've always wanted to hike the John Muir Trail in California. I booked us a permit for next August, 3 weeks, just you and me in the mountains. Lily stared at him, tears welling in her eyes. 3 weeks. Kyle, that's your whole working life. You never take that much time off. I want to, with you, if you'll have me. Lily set down the journal and envelope and grabbed his face, kissing him hard. Kyle wrapped his good arm around her, pulling her close. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Lily said, I love you. I know it's only been a few months, but I love you. I love you too, Kyle said, the words feeling right, feeling true. I've probably loved you since you told me my $3,000 shoes should walk me out of the wilderness by themselves. Lily laughed through her tears. That was a good line. It was a great line. They spent Christmas together, and it was the best holiday Kyle could remember. Simple, quiet, full of love. They cooked dinner together in Lily's tiny kitchen, watched the snow fall, talked for hours by the fire. It was perfect. In January, Kyle's cast finally came off. His arm was weak but healing well. Lily helped him with physical therapy exercises, patient and encouraging. She was always there, supporting him, believing in him. In February, Kyle made a decision. He called Rachel into his Denver office for a meeting. I'm moving to Colorado full-time, he announced. Somewhere between Denver and Durango, maybe Salida or Buena Vista. Somewhere I can still access my properties but also be closer to Lily. Rachel did not look surprised. About time. I've been wondering when you'd figure this out. Really? Kyle, you've been different since the crash. Happier, more present. If Lily is the reason for that, then moving to be near her makes perfect sense. What about the business? You've built a good team. We can handle the day-to-day operations. You'll still be the owner, still make the big decisions. But you don't need to be in Denver for that. Most of your properties are on the West Coast anyway. You make it sound so simple. It is simple. You're just overthinking it because you've spent 6 years making your business your entire identity. But Kyle, you're more than your company. You're allowed to have a life. Kyle sat back in his chair. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You were just too busy to notice. 2 weeks later, Kyle made an offer on a property in Salida, a small mountain town halfway between Denver and Durango. It was a historic house that needed work, with good bones and spectacular views. Exactly the kind of project he loved. But this time, he was not buying it to flip. He was buying it to live in, to make into a home. He took Lily to see it before the purchase closed. She walked through the room slowly, taking everything in. The original hardwood floors, the big windows, the stone fireplace, the workshop space that could be converted to Kyle's office, the yard with mature trees and room for a garden. What do you think? Kyle asked nervously. I think it's perfect. I think you're going to do amazing things with this place. I was hoping we would do amazing things with this place. Lily turned to look at him. What are you saying? I'm saying I want you to move in with me. I know it's fast and I know you love your cabin. But Salida is closer to your work than Durango anyway. You could still keep the cabin as a retreat, somewhere to go when you need solitude, but this could be our home, our base. Lily bit her lip, clearly torn. Kyle, I don't know, this is a huge step. I love you. I want to build a life with you. This house feels like the right place to do that. What if we're making a mistake? What if we're rushing this? Kyle stepped closer, taking both her hands in his. We've been together for almost 6 months. I know that's not long by some standards, but Lily, I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to come home to you every night. I want to build something with you that's ours." Tears spilled down Lily's cheeks. "You're sure? Really sure?" "More sure than I've ever been about anything." "Then yes. Yes, I'll move in with you." Kyle kissed her, pouring every ounce of love and commitment he felt into it. When they finally broke apart, both were smiling. The next few months were a whirlwind. Kyle closed on the house and started renovations, this time taking his time, doing it right. Lily gave notice at her cabin and started the process of transferring her work base to Salida. It meant a slightly longer commute to some of her ranger stations, but the town was centrally located for much of her wilderness work. They moved in together in May, the house still partially under construction but livable. It was chaotic and messy and absolutely perfect. They painted walls together, chose furniture together, argued affectionately about where to hang pictures. Kyle had never been more content. In August, they hiked the John Muir Trail, just as Kyle had promised. 3 weeks in the Sierra Nevada mountains, carrying everything they needed on their backs. It was the hardest thing Kyle had ever done physically, and also the most rewarding. Away from cell service, from work, from everything except each other and the wilderness, Kyle finally understood what Lily had been trying to tell him all along. Life was not about accumulating wealth or success. It was about moments. About watching the sunrise from a mountain pass with the person you loved. About the satisfaction of a hard day's hike and a warm meal at camp. About conversations under the stars and the peace of complete silence. On their last night on the trail, camped beside a crystal-clear alpine lake, Kyle pulled out a small box he had been carrying for 3 weeks. "Lily Sanders," he said, opening the box to reveal a simple ring with a small diamond. "Will you marry me?" Lily's hand flew to her mouth, tears already streaming down her face. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious. I love you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want to hike every trail in the Rockies with you. I want to renovate houses and fight fires from a safe distance and grow old together. Marry me." "Yes," Lily sobbed. "Yes, absolutely yes." Kyle slipped the ring onto her finger, and they held each other as the stars came out overhead. The same stars Lily had shown him that night in Silverton almost a year ago. It felt like coming full circle, like the universe had known all along where they were headed. They were married in October, exactly 1 year after Kyle's helicopter crashed. The ceremony was small, held in the mountains Lily loved, with just their families and closest friends. Emma and Olivia were Lily's bridesmaids, thrilled to officially welcome her to the family. Rachel was there, smiling knowingly, probably thinking, "I told you so." Marcus, the pilot, attended too, fully recovered from his injuries. He and Kyle had stayed in touch, forming an unlikely friendship born from shared trauma. "You know," Marcus said at the reception, "if I hadn't lost that engine, you never would have met Lily." "I've thought about that," Kyle admitted. "Best worst thing that ever happened to me." "To second chances," Marcus toasted. "To second chances," Kyle agreed. Kyle and Lily honeymooned by hiking sections of the Continental Divide Trail, the same trail Lily had been hiking when Kyle crashed into her life. It felt appropriate, walking the path together that had brought them to each other. They settled into married life with surprising ease. Kyle continued his business, but on his terms now. He took on fewer projects, choosing ones that excited him rather than ones that simply made money. He spent more time in Salida, less time traveling. He learned to snowshoe and ski, to identify animal tracks, to appreciate the quiet majesty of the mountains. Lily continued her work as a ranger and wilderness EMT, still disappearing for days at a time for rescues or fires. Kyle learned to handle the anxiety of not knowing where she was or if she was safe. He learned to trust her competence, to respect her need for independence and purpose. Their house slowly transformed from a construction project into a home. They added personal touches everywhere. Photos from their hikes covered one wall. Lily's guitar sat in the corner of the living room. Kyle's home office was full of blueprints and property photos, but also books on ecology and wilderness survival that Lily had given him. In the spring, Lily announced she was pregnant. They had not been actively trying, but they had not been preventing it either, content to let life unfold naturally. Kyle was terrified and elated in equal measure. "I don't know anything about being a father," he confessed. "You'll learn," Lily said calmly. "Same way you learned everything else. Besides, you're going to be great." "How do you know?" "Because you love fully and completely. Because you're patient and kind. Because you'll show our kid that success and happiness can look a lot of different ways." She took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "This baby is lucky to have you as a dad." Their daughter was born in December, during the first big snowstorm of the season. They named her Sarah, after Lily's mother. She had Lily's dark hair and Kyle's eyes, and she was absolutely perfect. Holding his daughter for the first time, Kyle thought about the path that had led him here. The obsessive focus on work that had left him hollow. The helicopter crash that should have killed him. Stumbling into Lily's camp half dead and finding salvation by her fire. Every choice, every moment, had been leading him to this. "What are you thinking about?" Lily asked from the hospital bed, watching him hold Sarah. "About how none of this was part of my plan. Is that a bad thing?" Kyle looked at his wife, his daughter, his unexpected, unplanned, absolutely perfect life. "It's the best thing. I was so busy planning my life that I was not actually living it. And then I crashed, literally and figuratively, and found something better than anything I could have planned." Pretty philosophical for a guy running on no sleep. "That's what parenthood does to you, I guess," Lily laughed softly. "Come here." Kyle carefully sat on the edge of the bed, Sarah cradled in one arm, his other arm around Lily. His family, his home, his everything. "I love you," he said. "Both of you, so much." "We love you too," Lily murmured, already half asleep. Kyle sat there for a long time, holding his girls, watching the snow fall outside the hospital window. Somewhere out there were the mountains where he had crashed, where his old life had ended and his new one had begun. He sent a silent thank you to the wilderness, to chance, to whatever forces had brought him and Lily together. The years that followed were full and rich. Sarah grew into a curious, adventurous child who loved hiking with her mother and building things with her father. Kyle cut back his business even more, focusing on being present for his family. He and Lily found their rhythm, balancing work and parenthood and their relationship. They had a son 2 years after Sarah, a boy they named Robert after Lily's father. He was quieter than his sister, but just as adventurous, happy to spend hours exploring the woods around their house or helping Kyle in his workshop. Kyle never returned to the workaholic intensity of his early 20s. He had learned the hard way that success without life was empty. He still did well financially, still loved the satisfaction of transforming broken properties into something beautiful. But now it was balanced with family dinners and weekend hikes and quiet evenings by the fire with Lily. On their 5th anniversary, they returned to the spot where Kyle's helicopter had crashed. It had taken some work to find it, hiking in from the nearest trail, but Lily's navigation skills made it possible. The wreckage was long gone, removed by the recovery team, but the boulder-strewn valley was the same. "I cannot believe this is where it happened," Kyle said, looking around. It seems impossible that I survived. You're tougher than you look, Lily teased, only because you found me. The universe brought you to me. I just did the rest. Kyle pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. Best crash I ever had. Worst pickup line I ever heard. They stood there together, looking out at the mountains, at the vast wilderness that had brought them together and continued to sustain them. Kyle thought about the man he had been 5 years ago, so focused on building wealth that he had forgotten to build a life. He barely recognized that person now. "What are you grateful for?" Lily asked, a game they played sometimes, listing the things that made life worth living. "You," Kyle said immediately. "Sarah and Robert, this life we've built. The fact that I know the difference between a lodgepole pine and a ponderosa now," Lily laughed. "I'm proud of that last one. You were pretty hopeless in the beginning. I had a good teacher." "You did," she paused. "I'm grateful too, you know. For you, for our kids, for the fact that you stumbled into my camp that night. I had convinced myself I was fine alone, that I didn't need anyone. But I was wrong. I needed you. We needed each other." "Yeah," Lily agreed softly. "We did." They hiked back out as the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and reds. Their children were with Kyle's parents for the weekend, giving them this rare time alone. They would return to Salida tomorrow, back to the beautiful chaos of family life. But for now, it was just the two of them and the mountains, exactly where their story had begun. That night, lying beside Lily in their tent, Kyle thought about all the definitions of success he had held over the years. Money, properties, business achievements. All of it paled in comparison to this. A woman he loved sleeping peacefully beside him, 2 healthy children waiting at home, a life full of purpose and connection and joy. He had been falling when Lily found him, literally tumbling from the sky toward what should have been death. Instead, he had been falling toward her, toward this life, toward becoming the man he was always meant to be. The helicopter crash had not destroyed his life. It had saved it. Kyle closed his eyes and let sleep take him, the mountain air cool and clean, Lily's breath steady beside him, the stars shining overhead in their eternal dance. He had found everything he needed in the most unexpected place, in the most unexpected way. And he would spend the rest of his life being grateful for the crash that led him home.